What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and this is Portal, my very first powerful Mini-Itx build on the channel. How powerful, you might ask? Well, I threw in a 7700K, 16 gigs of RAM from g.skill and packed it with a massive 1080 Ti from Asus. This thing is no joke, it's long and thick. That's what she said. Seriously though, it barely fits inside the case, but more on that later. I'm also using the Asus Z270i motherboard because it's packed with a bunch of features. It supports overclocking, features 4 SATA ports, dual PCI Gen 3 M.2 support for RAID configurations, Wi-Fi connectivity, it's got 3 4-pin fan connectors, and it even has RGB. For storage, I'm using a 1TB hard drive from Western Digital for mass storage. However, the main drive that runs the OS is an M.2 SSD from a Pacer, which I picked up really cheap. And finally, the power supply I had to go with was the Corsair SF600 because the standard ATX power supplies do not fit inside this case. And speaking of case, this is a very interesting Mini-Itx chassis. It's unique for several reasons. Reason number one is it doesn't have a side panel, and instead the clear panel is actually near the top, showing off the GPU and only the GPU. But I do have a version without a clear panel. Second reason is the motherboard layout is inverted, and sadly that's the only option available. And finally, you can actually separate the case, giving you access to the key components inside. My initial reaction while I was building inside this case was, holy crap, this thing looks awesome. It's basically like a transformer case. I love it. It is my favorite Mini-Itx case by far. Well, after the excitement died down and I finished building the PC and played around with it for a while, I realized that the pull-out method was just a gimmick. Isn't the pull-out method always a gimmick? So yeah, here's a problem that I ran into after finishing the build. It tilts, and it doesn't really matter what parts you use. Once you pull out the tray to at least halfway out, it's gonna tip over because it's lacking support to balance. So doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of having a case that you can pull out if it's just gonna tip over? Also, not to mention that you need to remove 2 thumb screws from the back in order to pull it out, and actually one of the thumb screws is blocked off by the PSU cable, so you can't even use a screwdriver to remove it. You're just gonna have to use your fingers in the hopes that it's not over tightened. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love this case. It's actually still my favorite Mini-Itx case out there because the design is really awesome. It looks really cool on any desk you put it on, and I had so much fun building inside of it for several reasons. Everything was really easy to install. There was plenty of space to hide the cables. Everything was just easily within reach. It's got 2 hard drive bays and 1 SSD tray near the top, and both the USB 3.0 ports are on its side. Speaking of cable management, I decided to go with the white extensions to match the white and black theme, but soon after, I realized that it was a stupid idea since you can't even see any of it. Because of the extensions, I had a lot of extra cable slack to work with, making the cable management a bit difficult. Thankfully though, I had the entire bottom slot of the hard drive bay, which I wasn't using, to route and hide the cables in. If you're gonna get this case and use up both of the hard drive bays, then sadly you're gonna have a tough time managing cables, that's for sure. I even had to route some cables on the exterior of the case since there was no more room inside, and thankfully there was still some clearance left on the sides of the case, which let me barely slide it back inside. The only real clearance issue I had was the Gravis card. The Strix 1080 Ti is noticeably thicker than the 1060 and 1070, and because of that, the corner of the shroud scrapes against the case as I slide it in and out. So if you're gonna use the same card inside this case, it's gonna fit, but barely, and it's gonna scrape your GPU every time you slide it in and out. Alright, so let's talk temps. I had some mixed feelings about them because the 7700K easily hits 5 GHz at 1.3 volts. I've actually done it on 2 of my other 7700K chips, but this one in particular runs a bit hotter for some reason. Not only did I not achieve the 5 GHz clock speed, but the temps are in the high 80s during full load, so I had to knock it down to 4.8 GHz at 1.25 volts instead to keep the temps under 80 degrees. So I either have a bad CPU or a bad cooler. The thing is, I've used the 120EX before, which kept my 6700K really cool on the Trigon build, so I know that these coolers are great from Deep Cool. I just think I got very unlucky this time around. However, I did overclock the RAM and GPU as well. I was only able to push the Strix 1080 Ti a little under 50 MHz on the core clock and almost 200 MHz on the memory. For the most part, the case is enclosed, but there are fan grills located on all 4 corners of the case to provide some airflow, and there's even a concave near the top which lets additional hot air escape from the back. For 5-strike benchmarks, I scored 22,167, putting this right below the Titania build I did back in January, which had 2 Titan X's. Alright, so with all of that out of the way, here is what this PC can do in 4K gaming in max settings. Let's check out the benchmarks. I'm definitely happy with the way this build turned out. It's powerful, portable, and looks amazing on any desk. They do have a black version as well, and I'll drop a link to all the parts used in this PC down below. If you guys enjoy my monthly PC builds, leaving a like really helps me out a ton. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video.